I'm Bob Brill. He's Erik Kramer, and welcome to Kramer and Brill, a fantasy football and NFL podcast, and now a videocast as well. You can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and LibsonRadio.com, and wherever you get your podcast. Now we're also on Megaphone through the C-Suite network. Also, you can see the videocast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel or by finding the links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That's the easiest way. You can see it right there at the bottom of your screen, kramerandbrill.com. During the offseason each week, we're taking a look at each NFL team as they prepare for the draft of the upcoming year. This week, our guest is David Birkett, who covers the Detroit Lions for the Detroit Free Press. Dave, pleasure having you with us today. We're looking forward to this.
Yeah, happy to be here. Hope you guys are doing well.
We are. Before we get to the Lions and that huge trade and the moves they've made so far, why don't you recap the season Detroit had briefly for us?
Yeah, it was a rough year. I mean, I think it was a different year for everyone, obviously, with COVID and everything that was going on. But look, the Lions entered with really Matt Patricia being on the hot seat, and they knew they needed to make the playoffs essentially for him to keep his job. And things just didn't start off great. Really, I think a lot of the Lions' issues went back to 2018 when Matt was hired, and just some of the lack of buy-in that the team had in the locker room. Things never got straightened out. And of course, Matt Patricia, Bob Quinn, the general manager, were fired around Thanksgiving. And here we sit right now, coming off a 5-11 season. The Lions have a top 10 pick for a third straight year. And there's been a whole lot of change in Detroit.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, so I don't know when the last time it occurred in the NFL where there's been a new quarterback, a new head coach, a new general manager all at the same time. Now you bring in, well, I guess the team, not you, but brings in Chris Spielman, who I played with. And, I guess in a way trying to revamp or remold what goes on in that building. And to me, that seems like somebody has said, okay, now it's time to clear out whatever happened before and get back to where we're moving in the right direction. Does it feel that way to you, that what's gone on so far since all the new hires have amounted to at least something of the start in the right direction?
100%. I think you nailed it. I mean, I wrote back in November, December, that this was the biggest crossroads of the organization since who knows when, probably at least when Matt Millen took over, maybe even before that, because of exactly what you mentioned. New coach, new GM, potential for a new quarterback, which is played out, and really a new owner too, and Sheila Ford Hamp being essentially in her first year of being the full-time owner. And look, the bottom line, I think, with every NFL team is you have to get the right players on the field if you're going to have success. That starts with getting the right people in the front office. And I think they do have the right people that they've brought on board. I mean, smart guys seem to be approaching this the right way. No telling if it's going to work because we don't know who they're going to bring in to play the game yet. But I like the way that they're going about it with really tearing this thing down to the studs in some ways and building this whole franchise in the image that they want it to be.
It seems the Rams and the Lions are in the same bedroom these days. Yeah, first you got Jared Goff. Now you got Michael Brockers, who the Rams traded for a 7th-round pick and a salary dump. And the Lions gave him $24 million. What's going on there?
Yeah, and not just a 7th-round pick, a 7th-round pick like 2 drafts from now, which is, the proverbial bag of balls in baseball that you would trade somebody for. I mean, that's really what it was from the Rams standpoint, is they needed to, and I think both the Jared Goff trade and the Michael Brockers trade were, both of those players certainly can play in the NFL. And so the Lions, they paid 10 cents on the dollar to acquire a guy that can help them on the field. From the Rams standpoint, they think they're a Super Bowl contender, and they wanted the upgrade at quarterback, and they needed the cap space in getting rid of both Jared Goff and Michael Brockers, the cap and cash space, to be able to make some additions. And the Lions are, they're in a rebuild. I know the Lions, regime has been, they haven't quite wanted to say that word yet, but I think if we're being honest, that's sort of where they're at. And that doesn't mean they're going to go, 1-16. That just means that, the real window for opportunity is a couple of years down the road, and the things they are doing right now, hopefully will set them up for that success that they envision having.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about how quickly, you say the word rebuild, and everyone thinks, at least from people when I played, okay, so yeah, that seems like so far down the tracks. But nowadays, you've got think about this. This year seems so unusual in that you've got all these free agents coming on the market all at the same time. Like, when's there ever been this many edge rushers all at once, or receivers all at once. But then you've got the lowered cap space. And so now you've got not only free agents hitting, but then these cap casualties hitting. And then you got maybe draft picks that teams are having to think, wait, do I want to pay top dollar for a free agent when I got a good young receiver or whoever that I could potentially draft at the same time? So that's an interesting, sort of dynamic. And I think I look at the Lions and I think, if I had to name one spot, one position that seems to be solid, at least offensively, I think it would be the offensive line. And then you couple that and you have TJ Hawkinson, who we've been talking about now thought he was going to have a breakout year maybe as a rookie. Well, it happened his second year.
Eric loves TJ Hawkinson, by the
way. What's that? Tight ends, right? Best friend, quarterback's best friend. I know.
No doubt. Plus, you could see, you could tell the Lions were designing plays for Hawkinson. We're all over the field, but especially in the red zone. And that seems like a good set of building blocks to me. When you got, that you don't have everything, but now you got an excellent tight end. Excellent quarterback in Jared Goff. And, it seems to me like that's where you start. You got a good offensive line. Dan Campbell's talked about kind of setting a new tone with the culture in the locker room and within the building. And to me, it seems like they've got the right pieces, at least to start. And while this might not be the year where it all turns around record-wise, it doesn't seem like it might be that far off.
Well, I think, rebuild has a negative connotation probably from a lot of the other sports, right? Because it takes so long to, tear down a baseball team or basketball or build those back up. You got to go through minor leagues and it's 5 years after you draft a guy that he's hitting the majors. But in the NFL, it really is built for a quick turnaround. And look, I don't think the Lions are going to be very good this year, just to put that out there. I don't think they're going to be, again, 1-16 awful, but I think it's going to be, there will be some growing pains. To me, the most important thing that they need to do this offseason is get that quarterback position right if it's possible. I don't know that Jared Goff is the guy. I think, he's young enough and he's played in the Super Bowl. And so certainly you have to give him a chance. But with the number 7 pick in the draft, if you deem one of those quarterbacks to be that guy, right, that he's got the talent, he is the guy to build around. You don't need him this year. You have Jared Goff. That's what the organization really has to weigh is, can they find the guy that is going to lead them to the promised land, whether it's Jared or someone else this year, next year with all their extra draft capital, whenever that is in the near future.
I think DeAndre Swift proved last year he could be the guy in the backfield, and at least I saw that. Yet they bring in Jamal Williams, who you guys, at the time we're taping this, you guys had him yesterday. And what's the overall running back situation look like?
Yeah, well, I think, to that point and to Eric's point about TJ Hawkinson, this is going to be a different looking offense this year, probably. Jared Goff gets it done a little bit different way than Matthew Stafford. And so there's going to be a lot put on the running back shoulders and maybe more on TJ Hawkinson's shoulders too. DeAndre Swift is still, running back one. He's going to be the guy that is the feature back. Jamal Williams, I would expect to play a similar role to what he played in Green Bay, where, he's running for 500 yards, but he's playing on third downs a lot because he's a really good pass protector. He catches 35 or 40 passes out of the backfield. So he's a valuable guy to have in this backfield and how they want to build this offense. And I do think they will run the ball a little bit more. I do think they, Jared's strengths, at least talking to some of the coaches that have worked with him, is more of that drop back passing game. So I think you'll see him in more of those situations, but they don't have a lot at the receiver position right now. So a lot will be on TJ Hawkinson. Maybe they draft a receiver. DeAndre Swift's going to catch 60 passes. They're going to do it a different way than they have in the past.
It's interesting because, having played with Barry Sanders, that was the best ticket in the house, hand the ball off to Barry and watch him make miracles happen. He might lose a yard, but it might be the best run of the season. Yeah. And then they go so many years. I was talking with somebody back there yesterday, and I guess Matthew Stafford, in all the years he's been there, 11 years, had, and you probably know this, there's been a 100-yard rusher in a game for the Lions 9 times. That is crazy. Barry had 14 in 1 year. It wasn't the year I played. I'm guessing it was that 2,000-yard season. But that's just, you have to, I think, to be consistent. It seems like the Lions are kind of going in that direction. Building up a bunch of running backs, a good offensive line. That's kind of where you need to go. To me, is you got to have something that you can rely on running the ball, and not have to be in drop back pass situations 3 downs in a row.
Well, Erik, I'll throw another stat at you because I've liked to use this one in the years past. The last time the Lions ranked in the top half of the NFL in rushing was Barry Sanders' last season with the team. That was 1998. So that's how long it's been since they've had even an average rushing attack. And that's putting a lot on the quarterback's shoulders. And look, there are some quarterbacks that can get it done, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes is the best in the game right now. We saw in the Super Bowl, even he needs help. But if you don't have a guy like that, and I don't think Jared Goff is that guy, and Matthews certainly wasn't that guy, you're probably asking a little too much of your quarterback. So you need to have a strong running game. You need to have a strong offensive line. And Erik, I agree, that is the strength of this team right now. And so to me, that's, when you're strong in the trenches like that, at least that's why the Lions, as much as I see them being in a rebuild, I don't think they're going to be, first pick bad next year. I think they have some of these pieces that will at least keep their head above water. And I think that's really important for a program and a new coach and a new GM too, to be able to hang your hat on something and say, hey, look, we're not where we want to be yet, but look how competitive we were in some of these games and look at what we're building.
They let Kenny Golladay walk. He goes to the Giants, picks up a huge contract, and they bring in Rashard Perriman. What's the wide receiver situation look like there at the moment?
It's desperate right now. I mean, it really is. Golladay was a really good player. I was a little surprised he got that money, but really good player. I think one of the top, 10 or so receivers in football. Marvin Jones left too. Danny Amendola is a free agent. Jamal Agnew's gone. So that's going to be a totally new receiving core. And you're right. Right now, it's Terrell Williams. He would be the number one guy, but he's not a number one receiver. He does have some deep speed. They'll be able to utilize him. Rashard Perriman, another guy that can run. I think we see maybe what they're trying to do at that position, and maybe all across the board is get some more speed on the field. I wouldn't rule out a receiver with the number 7 pick in the draft. Again, I think the Lions, I think just about anything is in play, quarterback, trade down. But the most likely scenario, I would say, for the Lions right now is to get a pass catcher, because there are 3 really good receivers, plus a tight end and Kyle Pitts, who will go in that general vicinity. And the Lions need to add some more weapons, I think, to properly evaluate Jared Goff this season.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You brought up the thing earlier about, is Jared Goff the answer for the long term? Who knows? And at number 7, coupled with the 2 draft picks that they've picked up, obviously in acquiring Jared Goff, I think that's, possibly package somebody along with one of those extra first round draft picks and possibly trade up, right? If you've located the quarterback you want to get, like you said, you don't need to play this year. And, that might be something to think about. But defensively, does any position sort of stand out as, okay, we are vacant here?
I think the linebacker is still pretty big. The Brockers addition, that's solidified the defensive line a little bit, right? I mean, at least now you look at Trey Flowers and Romeo Okwara and Brockers, and you see some talent up there. John Pennicini's a young guy he's a nose tackle, but at least a young guy that you say, all right, he can play. So they have some pieces up there. Still not enough depth, maybe not enough, true difference makers, but they have enough to get by. And in the back end, there's a couple of young guys. Jeff Okudah, their first round pick last year, and Amani Arourier, who at least there's some potential, but the linebacking core just is barren right now of depth and talent. Jamie Collins is back, but there's no one to pair with him. And so I think you'll see the Lions hit that position. They'll probably still sign someone here in free agency, but I do think you'll see them hit that position somewhere early in the draft, because again, they need difference makers on the defensive side of the ball, guys that get sacks and cause fumbles and, intercept passes. That's really what this defense has lacked since 2014. So if they can find somebody like that still to add to that unit, maybe that, speeds up this turnaround.
From what you're saying, it sounds like they're hoping Jamar Chase will be there at the number 7 pick.
Well, I think Jamar Chase, to me, is one of the top handful of players in the draft and the best receiver in the draft. Again, as I sort of look at what the Lions can do, I think all options are open right now. And, Erik, you mentioned trading up for a quarterback. Look, if you identify the quarterback, because it is the most important position in football, you identify a guy and say, that's who we need, that's who we want to build around. You have some capital to go up and get that player. I don't know if the Lions will do that. I mean, obviously a trade down and acquiring more draft capital, I think that's what everyone in Detroit wants to happen. And there's certainly you can make a case that would be the best thing for the organization. But a guy like Trey Lance, who's young, who doesn't need to play, if he's there at 7, I could see that. Jamar Chase, even Kyle Pitts, the tight end. Look, the Lions have a really good tight end, like we talked about in TJ Hockenson. But if you just look at Pitts as being sort of a matchup problem and, take the position value out of it, I think the Lions, I think there's a lot of options for the Lions at number 7.
Well, like you said, it's going to be interesting. And all these factors you don't even know who's going to drop out and be a cap casualty from now to next week. And so I guess all this stuff sort of factors in, and I'm guessing that, it's not just draft boards and who's going to draft who, but it's like all these free agencies coming out and kind of, as I mentioned, you kind of predict what could be some cap casualties, like Kyle Fuller, with the Bears getting dropped and then picked right up with the Broncos. 1-year deal, of course, but, there's going to be, it seems to me, some people fall out of the sky that the Lions might be able to pick up and just plug in right away and get some, get some play time out of them.
Well, yeah, you're right. Some of those, I think a lot of those guys have probably hit the market already, but you're right. You never know. I mean, a Michael Brockers, right, who becomes available now at the draft in when you're in a situation like the Lions are, at least you have the ability to maneuver. They don't have a lot of cap room, but they do have a little bit of future draft capital when you include the compensatory picks that they'll get for losing Kenny Galladay and Jared Davis and some of those players. The trick is, making sure that you leave yourself enough to continue building for the future, because that's really, again, where the Lions' window of opportunity is. That, they're going to be a decent team this year, but, they're not going to be a real, threat to win the division, I don't think, until 2022 or 23 or 24. And that's where, having the abundance of young, cheap talent, having the right quarterback in place, those things can make a big difference.
I think most teams want to go into the draft about $5 million under the cap, just because they got to pay the guys who are coming in. They got guys on the what you used to call the taxi squad, and you also you want to work in contingencies for injuries and stuff like that. Where do they sit down?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but they're really close to the cap. I mean, they entered the free agency with, I would say, bottom 10 cap space in the NFL. And again, the cap in the NFL today, you can create room, but the Lions have that rookie pool. They have enough to make those moves that they need to for the season, or they will at least. But other than that, I don't anticipate them being big spend. Not that there's a big ticket item out there to get, but they don't have enough money to add someone if there was.
Well, it seems like other than the Packers, I'd say everybody's kind of like in this, everybody else in the division, it seems no one's got all the answers at the moment. It doesn't look like anyway, roster wise. And you never know. I mean, like I was talking with Bill Keenis yesterday and with the Lions, and he was saying, we were talking about how the first game, DeAndre Swift catches that ball, they beat the Bears, and they lose the next week against Green Bay, but you don't know the mindset of a team, what can happen with the win here and there. And it would be nice to see them, I think, get off, in that first month of the season, at least with a couple of wins, and kind of so much of this game is confidence, right? And so if you start out slow, it's like, oh, here we go again. But on the flip side, if you get a ball to bounce your way a couple times, that can kind of help turn at least some momentum in favor of the Lions, and stack up a few wins and then get going.
Sort of the two thoughts I guess I have on that are you're right. Like, again, I'm lukewarm on their chances this year, but you look at what Miami did a couple of years ago, where everyone looked at the roster and you said, it's not a very good team, but they had the right coach in place and they won some games, and they really they put that foundation in place, and you could see last year they took another step forward, didn't quite get there to the playoffs, but they had a nice season. And I think if Dan Campbell, if Brad Holmes, if this regime is the right people, you'd like to see that sort of move here the first couple of years. And then, Erik, this may, as I look at the division, I mean, I think back a lot to sort of the 90s and whatnot. And you think about it, the Lions for 3 decades, right? The Green Bay Packers have had a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. I mean, one of the best players in the game in a Brett Favre and an Aaron Rodgers. And that's a tough hill for another organization to climb. I was talking with somebody who who went through it in the AFC East with Tom Brady and the Patriots for 20 years. And he just said, that team is always going to be there every single year. And that's what the Packers are. And so, the Lions, again, their window of opportunity, to me, maybe it matches up with when Aaron Rodgers is sort of done playing, right? Or I hate to say he's at the end of his career, but he's closing in on that at some point. He's an MVP, so it's not right now, but you understand what I'm saying, that 3-4 years from now, maybe Aaron is not Aaron Rodgers. And maybe that's when the Lions, if they get their quarterback right here in the relative, near future, that's when you can look at them and say, hey, maybe the Lions, it's finally their time to replace the Packers atop the NFC North pecking order.
Or maybe Aaron Rodgers becomes Tom Brady. So.
Yeah, maybe. Again, Aaron Rodgers is phenomenal, so don't put anything past him. Maybe he does play for another 8 years, and we're having this conversation again 8 years from now.
I have to ask you, how's the fan base taking everything? That was a big trade. Goff, who's been on the downside, and Stafford, who's been there for so long. As a fan, you got to think, oh, I love this guy. And they get rid of him. So how's the fan base taking this whole thing? Yeah,
I think certainly some people, a lot of fans, I think, will miss Matthew. He was for 12 years. He was the quarterback, right? He was the guy, and he did a lot of good things. Didn't win any playoff games, and that's on his record, not only on his shoulders, but certainly part of his ledger in Detroit. But the toughness, the things he did in the community, there were a lot of things that he did that really struck a chord with fans. So I think from that aspect, it's understandable why some people were sad to see him go. But I do think most fans are and have been realistic about it too, and saying, if you don't win a playoff game in 12 years, maybe it is time for the organization to go in a different direction. And frankly, maybe this was the best thing for everyone involved. I think that's the approach that Matthew took. I wrote about this back in the fall, that I sort of thought that this was, would be the best thing for the organization. I just didn't know if the organization would have it in it to go out and trade, the quarterback that all these fans identify with. And Matthew took that decision out of their hands when he asked for that trade. And I think ultimately it will be the best thing for everyone involved.
Sticking on with Stafford for a minute. So 12 years. Okay. So obviously he's, 32, 33, right in there. Okay. So there's been some quarterbacks, obviously, in the NFL in history that have had kind of resurgences. Not that his has ever fallen off, but sort of taken that next step, gotten to a new team. Someone like Jim Plunkett comes to mind, and seeing what Brady's doing now. Do you foresee with a team like the Rams, I hate to put it in those terms for Lions fans, but do you think that this could be somewhat of a rebirth, I guess, for him to potentially be with what I think is one of the best organizations, if not the best, in terms of, the way they're structured, the head coach being a dynamic, play call, at least offensively. And could that be something Stafford steps into, and then who knows how far they can go?
Yeah, really bright offensive mind he's going to be working with now. And, you look at defensively, and I talked about the Lions not having those difference makers. Well, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey are two, obvious difference makers on defense. So I think there's no doubt that the Rams have more pieces in place. Look, I remember talking to Kurt Warner about this last summer, right? There was some talk, hey, is this the year Stafford, can he finally get it done? Can he carry this team? And Kurt said the one thing with Matthew was, he's, for so long, he was the guy in Detroit that everything fell on his shoulders, that, when push came to shove, maybe he made a mistake or whatever, because he was always putting everything on his shoulders, right? He felt he had to, because he wasn't getting enough help from other people. And so I wonder how that dynamic is going to play out in LA. Is he still going to be that guy that, and he's been phenomenal end of games, but sometimes you do see some of those careless interceptions. So I wonder, is he going to be able to realize now that, hey, I have more talent around me, I have more pieces around me, I don't have to do this all by myself. I think the Rams are a playoff team next year. I think the NFC is completely up for grabs. I don't know that there's a dominant team. Like, I still see the Kansas City Chiefs being in the AFC. So I think the Rams have a shot, but if I was a betting man right now, I probably would bet against the Rams, making the Super Bowl, just playing the odds of it.
This week, our guest has been Dave Birkett, who covers the Detroit Lions for the Detroit Free Press. Dave, it's been a real pleasure having you with us. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, guys. Do it again sometime.
You got it. There you have it.
Thanks,
Kramer and Brill, a fantasy football podcast, and now a video cast as well. You can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, libsynradio.com, and wherever you get your podcasts. Now you can also see the video cast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel or by finding the links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That's the easiest way, right there at the bottom of your screen, kramerandbrill.com. For Dave Birkett, my colleague and friend Erik Kramer, I'm Bob Brill. We'll see you next time.